Hey everyone, it's Kong again, and here's another episode of Should You Summon? As always, I'm going to be presenting high-level overviews using these 4 criteria to help you decide whether this banner is worth your hard-earned vouchers and crystals. How these characters fit into your team, whether they unlock any bonds, what kind of content they get used for, and their future availability. So let's get right into this METEOR STRIKE Destiny banner featuring Omega, Virash, and Cherie, running from July 16th to July 29th. As a Destiny banner, of course, your first SSR is guaranteed to be one of these 3 characters that you don't already have. After your first SSR pull, this reverts to a normal rate-up banner, and you can start getting any random off-banner heroes. So let's start with Omega. Oddly enough, Omega was kind of underrated when he first launched because all the hype was on Yulia at the time. I think people may have thought he was just a decent assassin with no real reason to build him when Zerida was already a thing. Interestingly, while people were initially evaluating him based on what he could do in PvP, he really started to shine as a PvE cheese mainstay. He can use Cold Blood to move an additional 2 tiles before attacking. His talent also lets you teleport back to where you initiated your action, and then move 1 to 3 more spaces if you killed your target. You want to run him in his assassin class for higher skill, and then jack his skill up as much as possible to give yourself the best chance of being able to take advantage of surprise attack. This ability allows you to ignore guard if your skill is double that of your target, and even bypass troops if your skill is triple. Give him an Uller's bow and you can do all this without fear of counter damage. He's a member of METEOR STRIKE, buffed by Zerida, and Dark Reincarnation, buffed by Bozil and Licorice. For bonds, he unlocks the defensive bond for Gizarov, and he needs Sigma for his own defensive bond and Lambda for his attack bond. Now for content, Omega is actually a pretty solid character for trivializing a lot of run-of-the-mill PvE stuff, like story, time rifts, timeless trials, joint battles, and some challenges. Surprise attack ignoring guard and troops can let him erase many units, and then teleport back to safety thanks to his talent. While this makes him very useful against normal enemies, it also means he's not the greatest at sustained fights against big, HP sponge super bosses. So even though his factions do give him a boost in certain Eternal Temple or Ancient Beckoning fights, he's not really worth fielding there. While you don't see him super commonly in PvP, he's still a threat, and his surprise attack skill did shift the meta for a while, namely how players spec'd out their equipment mastery enchants. It became very common to build at least enough additional skill to prevent being tripled by Omegas built to certain benchmarks. People then started being a little bit more lax or taking a little bit more risk with their skill stat after Omega use dropped off a bit in PvP. The big problem for Omega is once players reach those skill thresholds, his usefulness in PvP drops off dramatically. Players who can't outskill Omega will usually opt to ban him as early as possible, and if you do get a chance to field your Omega, you don't really know if you can outskill your opponents until it's too late, when you get into the match and start looking at their stats. For availability, there are actually no more banners featuring Omega on the predicted schedule for the rest of 2020. Now let's move on and look at Virash. Virash is primarily an aquatic unit with a weird talent that lets him live on and continue fighting for a number of turns after dying, depending on his star level. He also has an interesting suplex skill that moves an unguarded opponent behind him after he attacks, so that might be useful for some niche positional cheese. He does have a piece of unique gear that we're expecting to see on global servers in October, and this is a suit of armor that gives him a random buff every time he dies and gets a revive from his talent. He's a member of METEOR STRIKE, buffed by Zerida, and Yeles Legends, buffed by Landius and Sigma. For bonds, he unlocks the defensive bond for Brenda and the attack bond for the upcoming new character Helena. For his own bonds, he needs Lambda for his defensive bond and Rainforce for his attack bond. For content, in Eternal Temple, he could be useful against Scylla because he's an on-faction aquatic unit. His talent might also make him useful against Phoenix, in the sense that you can just let him get blown to smithereens and then get a few extra attacks out of him while his extra lives tick down. He's also technically on faction for Jormungandr and Nidhogg, but I don't see him making much of a dent in those. He doesn't get used a ton in high-level PvP, but when he does show up, he can be kind of annoying. His job is usually to charge in and do huge damage and then occupy your opponent's attention while they either try to splash him with some damage a few times, or else avoid him while his talent ticks down. Like a lot of the less common characters though, you might get some value against mid-tier players who don't really know how he works or how to deal with him. For availability, Virash is slated to return on another Destiny banner in early December, alongside Lanford and Shelfaniel. However, it's important to note that that's right before the Overlord collab is supposed to be launching, so if you think you're going to be hoarding for crossover units, that might not be the best time to try to summon a random catch-up character. Finally, let's talk about Cherie. Cherie is offered as a free SSR for new players who complete a series of missions, and her kit really does lend itself to supporting newer players through early game play. She's a well-rounded flying unit with a guard-ignoring 2-range skill in Shadow Raid, strong single-target skills, and a talent that lets her act again if she kills an enemy. Her 3-cost skill is a heavy-hitting single-target attack that heals her up after combat. If it secures a kill, its cooldown is reduced by 4, and if not, it stuns the target instead. She has a unique item in the Secret Realm shop that some people like and some people hate. It basically makes it so you don't die if you initiate into an enemy that would have killed you. This revive effect has a 4-turn cooldown. She's a member of METEOR Strike, buffed by Zerida, Legion of Glory, buffed by Ledin, Elwyn, and Grenier, and Princess Alliance, buffed by Luna and Shelfaniel. For bonds, she unlocks attack bonds for Almeida, Hein, and Lance, and she unlocks both the attack and defense bonds for Aaron and Keith. For her own bonds, she again needs Keith for her defensive bond and Hein for her attack bond. Now for content, in PvE, she's on faction for Leviar and Scylla in the Eternal Temple, and she's actually a top pick for Scylla because she can sweep the summoned monsters very effectively with her talent. She's also on faction for Jormungandr, Hugin and Munin, and Nidhogg. Her flying mobility, her talents act again, which really benefits from raising her to higher star levels, and her burst damage potential also make her a strong pick for most run-of-the-mill PvE content. She's not the most popular pick in high-level PvP, mainly because her relatives do certain things better than her. For example, Claret is a better tank buster, and Luna brings more team support. She was pretty good in the Magic Tower auto chess mode, though. For availability, there are no more banners featuring Cherie on the predicted schedule for the rest of 2020. So, here's the quick and dirty. Omega is a skill-hungry assassin. He unlocks the defensive bond for Gizaroth, and he activates easy mode for routine PvE content. Virash is a self-reviving aquatic unit who unlocks the defensive bond for Brenda and the attack bond for Helena. And Cherie is a strong PvE-focused sweeper. She unlocks attack bonds for Almeida, Hein, and Lance, and both bonds for Aaron and Keith. And she's a great option against Scylla. Now, just a note about upcoming banners. Next week, this banner should overlap with a rerun of another classic banner featuring 3 more old launch day standards: Elwyn, Leon, and Bernhardt. Then, the week after, when this banner expires, it'll be replaced by the launch of the new characters Licorice and Renata from Langrisser Reincarnation Tensei. Licorice is getting some rumbles of hype as the new Dark Faction buffer and healer, who can cause some nasty terrain effects, so she might be worth saving for if you don't need anything here. Virash is actually my guaranteed pull on this banner, so it's in my best interest to snipe him here to knock him off future Destiny banners, and also to future-proof me for bonds a little bit. I'm not planning on building or using him right away, but Helena's on the same banner as the Tree Sage, and I'm definitely going to be summoning like crazy on that one, so I am going to want to unlock her bond. Let me know in the comments if you're planning on summoning on this banner, or if you're just going back into saving up mode. Thanks so much again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next Should You Summon.